So I just watched a video titled Chase Customers Wonder, or Chase Customers Ask, where are my deposits? And Chase Customers Ask, where are my deposits? Now, I don't know if you guys have seen this video already, but even if you haven't, I think that the conversation will still resonate because of the inherent problem with the entire situation. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. If you would, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. YouTube took away maybe about 500 subscribers from me in the last couple days. So if you guys could help me get them back, that would be greatly appreciated. So the situation with Chase Bank, number one, I don't think I could do business with Chase Bank. Now, granted, these problems get highlighted on the news with stories and then get shared and spread and multiplied, even though maybe it's the same problem. Anybody who's ever been on a car forum and has come across a vehicle with potential car problems, for instance, the Ford Mustang GT350, which, you know, is a very, very popular vehicle. Folks like it for its flat plane crank V8. It's got some really good wheel options, great suspension, color choices, colorways. It's a good track car, and it was at one point affordable. And if you couldn't get you a GT500, a GT350 probably would have made you just as happy. But they had oil consumption issues, and a lot of the motors were being blown, it was getting a really bad name. Now, if you dig a little deeper, real owners will tell you, no, it's not that big of a problem. It's a higher revving, naturally aspirated V8 engine, and you're going to need to monitor its oil consumption and never let it get low. Plain and simple. Some people have GT350s with the original Voodoo engine. Some have the Voodoo 2 upgrade, and have never had any problems. I've never had any issues. So is it really that big of a problem, or was it a small problem that got blown out of proportion? If you ever go and look at reviews for restaurants, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, it's going to be easier to find, especially if you're a restaurant owner or any business owner for that matter. Customers will leave negative reviews. They will leave bad reviews faster and easier without suggestion than they will good reviews. And if you have a great experience somewhere, you'll have to ask, could you please tell somebody, could you please leave a good review? If they have a bad experience, you know they're going to do it. They're going to leave a bad review. You don't have to ask them to do it. You may have to try to convince them not to, but that's the thing. Overall, the negative wins. The negative wins. And that's what gets clicks, that's what gets views, that's what gets attention. So I say that to explain how maybe Chase Bank isn't so bad. Maybe these stories about Chase Bank are just blown out of proportion. But be that as it may, you know, if someone says that, you know, don't go over there, it's going to be dangerous, I'm not going to ignore them. I probably won't go over there, especially if multiple people say it. So I'm not going to engage in banking with Chase Bank. Now granted, I bank with Bank of America. I bank with Renaissance. I bank with Wells Fargo. I bank with other banks that have made headlines in the news for being problematic. But the Chase Bank situation just rubs me the wrong way. And perhaps I'm looking at it from the perspective of I would not begin a relationship with Chase Bank, as I already have relationships with these other banks and they've never caused any problems, therefore they get a pass in my book. This is just my thought, my opinion. I'm not trying to persuade anybody into doing anything, but the point that I'm trying to make is that Chase Bank last year had problems with their ATMs and in San Francisco or San Diego, and customers were losing a lot of money through a scam that was being run at the ATMs, and Chase Bank knew about it, and Chase Bank didn't do anything to fix it. Chase Bank, I'm not saying that they didn't give the people their money back. No, I'm saying that Chase Bank didn't even try to reprogram the ATM so that this scam couldn't happen. This glitch wouldn't work. They didn't care. So, in my opinion, they didn't care. Even after somebody set up their own private investigation to prove it with documented video evidence, they still did nothing. That is until they were approached by the media. We all kind of give the media a bad name, and they inherently get a black eye for being the media. But at the same time, the media is coming to the rescue of a lot of folks at a time of need. So this recent story about Chase Bank and the customers' deposits disappearing, again, the bank does nothing. One woman, almost $13,500 she deposited. Chase Bank says, we don't know where it's at. We don't know when you're ever gonna get it. I know you have a receipt that shows you made a deposit, but I don't know what to tell you. Another guy, I don't know what his amount was, but the woman with the $13,400 and something dollars, she had a small business. And I can tell you guys right now, small business, personal finance, if you make a deposit, especially a small business is rough, and that deposit doesn't come through, that could be detrimental. That could be detrimental to the after effects. Especially, she mentioned she had automatic drafts coming out of her account. So the news report showed an ATM. I'm assuming she made a deposit at an ATM. So now, for me, I would probably be more inclined to go inside the branch and make the deposit with an actual physical teller. But we all know that that's becoming increasingly more difficult to do as banks are laying people off and moving towards AI, closing their branches, and trying to move to a completely digital format. Even Capital One, which I don't think I could bank with Capital One, but Capital One, I went to Capital One, they had a lounge inside of Mall of America when we went this past summer. And they were like, yeah, it's a bank, but we don't have any tellers. It's just an ATM, basically. It's just an ATM. And so that's just the beginning of moving towards a completely digital age of banking. And it's pretty soon those people won't even be there. Kind of like, yeah, these banks, Bank of America, you got the Bank of Americas where there's no people in the branch. It's just a Zoom call, basically. So it's an office with a Zoom call. But regardless, the big problem here is the fact that the banks don't care. They screw their customers. And I'm not even saying the little guy. They'll screw all sorts of customers. The bank screwed Wex. I'm gonna pull up this guy's name because I got him in my phone. Because I talked to him last year, and Brandon Wexler with Wex Gunworks, and the bank screwed him. They closed his account. He had an account, whatever bank it was, I think it was Wells Fargo. 25 years, family account. He's running a business. He had interviews with, or maybe he was on the podium with Ron DeSantis last year, talking about the banking problem and this woke ESG ideology BS. And the banks don't care. Okay, So the problem is with this recent situation with Chase Bank is that they're screwing the customers, and when the customers call, when the customers visit, the customers get the big O F you and the standard typical response of, oh, there's nothing we can do. I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. I swear if I worked at a bank and they tried to teach me that, I'd literally just stand up and walk out, say I quit. I'm not gonna sit here and tell people, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do with their hard-earned money. You gotta be kidding me. So these folks, now granted, this is a sample size of 2 based on the news report that I watched. And these folks couldn't get any answers. They couldn't get any help. They couldn't get any support. They reach out to the local news station, and guess what? The news station calls the bank, and guess what? All of a sudden, they start getting answers. They start seeing the deposits show up. They get some sort of resolution. If that isn't telling you that the banks are screwing you, I don't know what will. Because why did it take the news to call? Because they don't care about the customers. They're like, screw you guys. If for instance, see, look at this. I'm back over here. That one's fresh. That one's fresh. See what I'm talking about? Anyway, I'm done complaining. The banks, if they knew perhaps maybe you had a large voice, if you were somewhat of an influential figure, they may treat you differently, but they would have to be made aware of that. But they know that the news is. There's no question about that. So when they call and say, I'm from the news channel, they hop to it. They go, we got to make something happen, because we can't let the world know how shady and how bad and how corrupt we are. So we need to hop to it and do something for these 2, shut them up. You got to think, the news calls, if you shut them up for those 2 and they stop talking about it, then they don't have to worry about addressing it for the other thousands that they continuously screw over day in and day out, left and right. What's the solution here? Possibly diversity. You know, diversity. I hate to say it, but it's like, it's a scary situation. If you need to make a deposit for $13,500 or so, maybe if you can get that in 2 different amounts and put half in one bank, put half in another bank, maybe. It's like you have to build your own safety net and your own fail-safe in this situation, because they'll leave you out to dry and they'll bend you over backwards in a heartbeat. But maybe if you're lucky, they'll spit on it, but there will be no lube, and they don't care. They don't care. You can't go to 100% cash. There's no way you can operate a business 100% cash. And paying your bills in cash is, you know, even if it's personal, isn't necessarily a completely viable solution. So again, the answer, the temporary solution, diversity. Maybe that's your best bet. Trying to choose the best bank, but I'll let you guys bicker about that in the comment sections about who's the best bank, because maybe some of these smaller local banks, these regional banks, but you know, for folks that live in big cities, those are non-existent. And with the current situation with the banking crisis, these small regional banks, local banks, are going to get rolled up by the bigger banks, and eventually they'll be gone. And unfortunately, like I said before, JP Morgan Chase will end up owning them all.